everybody. Welcome back to Yaya's World. I'm your host, Yaya Morgan. We're a space where we tell the truth, challenge perspectives, and have conversations that people are sometimes too uncomfortable to have out loud. And before I even get this episode started, I gotta take a deep breath. Because when I say I'm about to say and understand this clearly, I'm not here to destroy anybody. I'm not here to disrespect elders, nonprofit churches, or community leaders. I'm here to highlight patterns, ask hard questions, share my lived experience growing up in Marin City. This is coming from love. This is coming from concern. And most importantly, this is coming from somebody who wants better for the next generation. Let's start with the basics. Nonprofits were supposed to be solutions. They were created to fill gaps that the government either couldn't fill or didn't care enough to fill. Health services, education, housing, food access, youth development, community healing, economic opportunities. They were created to fill the gaps. No matter what, that's the purpose. And when you look at Marin County, especially Marin City, there are nonprofits everywhere. So naturally, the question becomes, if there are so many nonprofits, why are the same problems still there? Why are we still talking about poverty? Why are we still talking about homelessness? Why are we still talking about food insecurity? Why are we still talking about young people not having enough opportunities? At some point, we got to stop being scared to ask whether the system is actually helping people move forward or simply managing struggle. And that's where I need to talk about something uncomfortable. Poverty pimping. Now, for people who may not know what that means, let me explain it very simply. Poverty pimping is when organizations, systems, or even individuals build themselves around people staying in the struggle. Not necessarily dying, not necessarily completely failing, but never truly thriving. People can still survive. They can still go to work, still go to church, still make it day to day, but they never fully gain the tools, mindset, or opportunities to break cycles and create generational change. That's the difference. And over my 27 years of living in Marin City, I've encountered a lot of nonprofits in different ways. I've been the kid receiving services, the teenager filling out forms, the young adult participating in programs, the employee, the volunteer, the community member sitting in meetings. And every single nonprofit I've encountered had flaws, things that we can improve upon. Nobody is perfect. I'm not perfect either. But if you were created to solve a system problem, then eventually we should see the problem decrease or disappear, especially in a place like Marin City. This is in New York. This is in Los Angeles. Marin City is literally one way in and one way out. So if millions of dollars are being allocated towards community improvement, where is the measurable transformation? That's the real conversation that I really want to have. Here's what confuses me sometimes. If funding was secured years ago to create college access programs for Black youth, why aren't those pipelines stronger today? If organizations knew students needed mentorship, internships, and career exposure, why aren't more young adults from Marin City owning businesses, leading companies, and building wealth? If kids wanted summer jobs and opportunities, why aren't those programs sustaining long term? See, that's what I mean when I say we got to stop confusing programs with progress and progress with programs. See, anybody can create a program. But what happens after the funding ends? And that's the part that I want to talk about. That's the question. Because if a program disappears, the moment the grant money disappears, then what are we really building? Was it empowerment or was it dependency? There's a saying, teach a man to fish instead of just giving him a fish. And that matters. Because if people only survive when the organization is operating, then the community becomes dependent on the organization instead of becoming empowered within themselves. What happens when leadership changes? What happens when the grants dry up? What happens when nonprofits shut down? Did the people gain ownership? Did they gain tools? Did they gain confidence? Did they gain structure? Or did they just receive temporary relief? Everyone loves to talk about reparations. If you gave everyone $1 million, everyone just have $1 million and the $1 million would go right back into the economy like that. So let me go a little bit deeper. A lot of nonprofits operate almost like businesses. Employees are taught just enough to perform their role every day, but not enough to truly understand the bigger vision. It's like being on a plane. One person handles luggage, one person serves food, one person checks tickets, but only a few people know where the plane is actually headed. And sometimes in those organizations, community members are included in the work, but excluded from the real power. Excluded from ownership, excluded from leadership development, excluded from succession planning. So then the same people in leadership forever, while the young generation watches from the outside wondering. When will the torch be passed? But that's a real question. Not from disrespect, but from concern. Because every generation is supposed to be building something stronger for the next generation. That's how communities survive. I remember hearing stories about older Marin City. A Marin City where people knew each other deeply, where you could knock on somebody's door if you needed food, if you needed clothes, if you needed a place to sleep. People checked on each other. And now there's more resources than ever. But somehow less community. And now there's more resources. How did that happen? How do we gain more funding and lose connection? How do we gain more organizations but lose trust? And let me say this carefully. Churches and nonprofits have both dropped the ball in some areas. That doesn't erase the good they've done, but we have to be honest enough to talk about where we failed too. Because silence doesn't heal communities. Truth does. So here's the question I really want people thinking after this episode. If money was available back then to create programs, why don't some of those programs exist today if they didn't have as much money back then as we do today? If organizations truly cared about long-term impact, could some of these programs have survived with minimal funding? Are nonprofits being run like missions or businesses? What problem are we actually solving in 2026? And here's the biggest question of them all. How much money has actually come into Marin City since 1998? No, like seriously. How much county funding has been allocated? Where did it go? What produced lasting results? What didn't? And before people get defensive, accountability is not hate. Asking questions is not division. If anything, accountability is love because it means we still believe change is possible. And at some point, we have to decide, do we want Black excellence or are we comfortable managing Black survival? Because those are two different things. Black excellence means ownership, leadership, economic mobility, mental health, healthy families, technology, innovation, land, legacy. Survival is just getting through the day. And I refuse to believe Marin City was meant only for survival, especially when Silicon Valley is right in our backyards, especially how talented our young people are. There are too many gifted Black creatives, entrepreneurs, athletes, leaders, thinkers coming out of Marin City for us to still be having some of these same conversations decades after decade. That's why this matters to me, because I care about the youth the most. Not just today's youth, but tomorrow's too. Again, this episode wasn't about tearing people down. It's about opening the conversation. Trust me, this is only part one of this particular conversation, because there's so much more to unpack. I'm willing to have more episodes, more conversations, more talks, because our leadership, our generational distrust, our economic power, our community ownership, and what rebuilding Black neighborhoods can actually look like, we're not doing at the moment. So if this conversation made you feel uncomfortable, good. That was my goal. That means what I said is real. And if you disagree with me, that's okay too. Let's talk about it. Let's add everything up, because I'm at the table ready to set it. I need some candles. I need some placemats. But one thing we can't keep doing is pretending everything is fine when our communities are asking for more. This is Yaya's World. Thank you for listening. Protect your peace. Question everything. Never stop investing in the next generation. I'm out.